Hey everyone, it's Professor Clark, and in this lecture, we are going to have our introduction to adjectives. Adjectives in Russian can seem a little intimidating or complicated. They have a lot of endings, but the thing to remember about them is that they're very, very regular. So once you learn the rules, it will come very easily because they are very regular and predictable. So you just have to get over that first moment of panic when you see the charts of adjective endings and you're like, oh no, I can't do this. You can. Millions of people do this every day without thinking. It's actually pretty straightforward. So just remember that you can and will learn this, and it will come to seem very straightforward and natural to you. Let's start off with a basic definition so we all understand what we're talking about. And that is, what are adjectives? What are we even talking about when we talk about adjectives? Adjectives are words that describe a noun. And so examples in English would be something like big, small, dark, light, red, green. And in English, we always have to put our adjectives in front of the noun, except for very specific cases borrowed from other languages like court-martial. And in English, these adjectives then have to be listed in a specific order, which, to be honest, I can't tell you what it is because I am a native English speaker, and we native English speakers know this automatically, and we always know how to list our adjectives in the right order. But in English, again, word order is the important thing, and so we put adjectives in front of nouns and we list them in a specific order. In Russian, that is not necessarily the case. In Russian, adjectives normally go before the noun, but they don't have to because, again, the important thing are the case endings, not word order. But normally you're going to put the adjective before the noun, and they do not have to be put in the same order as in English, although there's nothing wrong about putting them in the order we put them in English. So I would say just put your adjectives in the order that feels natural to you, because it will probably be right. Just put them in front of your nouns, put them in the order that feels natural to you, and it will be correct enough. The thing to remember about adjectives in Russian is that, of course, they decline, and they must always match their noun in gender, case, and number, just like everything else we've learned so far. And they have their own endings that are not the same as noun endings. So for every case, you have to memorize both the noun endings and the adjective endings. Adjective endings look more intimidating at first because they are longer, but they are actually more regular and predictable. So once you learn them, you know them, and you shouldn't have a lot of trouble with them. Before we get into the actual adjectival endings, we need to talk a little bit more about spelling rules. And I just realized that in the last lecture, I inadvertently gave you a teaser. I started talking about the 5-letter spelling rule, but we don't actually officially learn it until this section of the textbook. So that was just like a fun trailer or teaser for what you're about to learn. So there are 2 spelling rules that matter for adjectives. Remember that overall there are 3 spelling rules in Russian. So by the time you get to the end of this slide, you will know 2/3 of the spelling rules in Russian. And we've already learned the 7-letter spelling rule, which says you can never write "ы" after velars and hushers, so gkh and zh, ch, sh, sha. Instead, you always have to write "и." And for adjectives, this spelling rule comes into effect for masculine and plural nominative endings. And then our new spelling rule, which I mentioned last time, but now we're actually going to learn it, is called, by Galasa, our textbook, the 5-letter spelling rule. And the 5-letter spelling rule states that you can never write an unstressed or after hushers and ts, so after the letters zh, ch, ts, sh, and sha. Instead, you must write yeah, and you're going to pronounce it kind of like because it will not be stressed. So again, this is no unstressed or after the hushers, so zh, ch, ts, which is kind of an honorary husher, a half husher, sh, and sha. Instead, you write yeah. And this is going to be important for neuter endings. So we use the 5-letter spelling rule for neuter endings. The 7-letter spelling rule is for masculine and plural endings, and the 5-letter spelling rule is for neuter endings. And finally, we have a chart of nominative endings. It may seem really kind of scary and overwhelming at first, but again, I repeat, adjective endings are long and there are lots of them, but they are very regular and predictable. So once you get used to them, you will not have any trouble with them. And so we have a whole variety of different situations. By far the most common type of adjective are going to be these hard stem, stressed adjectives. These are adjectives like novy, new, and stary, old. And they have a hard stem, because remember, when we're dealing with nouns and adjectives, everything's going to be either hard or soft. And then the stress is on the stem. It is not on that ending. And these are the most common. So the masculine nominative ending is y kratkoje, like novy, stary. Neuter is oje, novaya, staraya. And because of vowel reduction, if you are speaking with a standard Moscow accent, which is what you are being taught here, you are going to say novaya, staraya. But you write novoje, staroje, novaya, staraya. Feminine is aya, and again, you're going to say novaya, staraya. It's kind of aya in pronunciation, but you write aya. And then plural is uye, novye, starye. You also have a few, not a lot, but some of them are pretty important, hard stem adjectives that are stressed on the end, these end-stressed adjectives. And the only difference, other than the pronunciation, of course, but the only difference in spelling is that the masculine is going to end in oy. So we have молодой, young. And then neuter, молодое. Once again, we have oya, but we actually pronounce it, молодое. Feminine is aya, but because it's under stress, we're going to say молодая. We're going to actually pronounce the ending. And then plural is uye, and we say молодые. Then we have soft stem adjectives, almost all of which have N as their final consonant. There's one exception, kari, meaning brown eyes. But other than that, they're pretty much all going to have N. And then they're going to have I kratkoje. There's not a huge number of them, but some of them are very important. So for example, последний, last, as in the last in line or the last thing. Masculine, we have I kratkoje, I, so последний. Neuter is yeye, so последнее. And they're never going to be stressed on the end. They're always going to be stressed on the stem. So we say последнее. Feminine is яя, последняя. And plural is ие, последняя. And then finally, we get into the velar and husher stems, and a lot of textbooks just include them in the hard stem group, but I think it's easier to break them out into their own group. And so velar stems are adjectives ending in gkh, and these are pretty common because of this very common ski ending in Russian. They can be stem stressed or end stressed, and as with hard stem, the only difference is in the masculine. If they are stem stressed, like amerikansky, American, you're going to have I kratkoje, so I. If they are end stressed, you're going to have oi, like kakoi, what kind of. So we have amerikansky, kakoi. Neuter, we have oya, amerikanskaya, kakoya. Feminine, aya, amerikanskaya, kakaya. And plural, iya, amerikanskaya, kakia. Note that this is all the 7-letter spelling rule, and we see it here in the masculine and the plural. And then we have husher stems, and these are more complicated because both the 7-letter spelling rule and the 5-letter spelling rule come into play. So if they are stem stressed, we have to worry about the 7-letter spelling rule, but we also have to remember the 5-letter spelling rule. So masculine is going to be и хороший, for example. And again, we will write и краткое, but depending on the actual letter before it, we may say хороший. Neuter is yeah, because we cannot write an unstressed o after a husher. So we have хорошая. Feminine ая, хорошая. Plural ия, хорошая. And then occasionally, very occasionally, you will have an end-stressed husher stem adjective. The only one that you should really care about is the word большой, big, which is very, very common. So you definitely want to be able to decline that one correctly. Masculine is going to be ой, like all end-stressed adjectives. So большой, as in the Bolshoi Theater. The Bolshoi Theater is the big theater. Neuter is oya because the 5-letter spelling rule is not in play here. Большое. Feminine, as always, is aya, большая, and plural is iya, большие. So I hope that was not too overwhelming. Once again, it can look like a lot of endings, but if you actually look at them, you'll notice how similar they are and how regular the patterns are. And so once you get used to it, it is not nearly as hard as you might be thinking it is right now.